we have, unfortunately, limited supply of electricity during the day and during the night, and it makes lives difficult for all of us.
Ukraine was forced to stop the export of electricity to the EU.
The Ukrainian energy system is resilient and will withstand the war.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euro-Atlantic Course. I'm your host, Maria Romanenko. Without gas or without you, without you. Without light or without you, without you. Cold, hunger, darkness and thirst aren't as scary and deadly for us as your friendship and brotherhood. These were the famous words of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on September 11th in response to Russian bombings which led to blackouts in the Kharkiv and Donetsk regions. Since then, 80% of Ukraine's renewable energy was damaged by Russia, and nearly a half of energy objects in Ukraine overall has been damaged as well. This is part one of our two-part series on the state of Ukraine's energy infrastructure today in the face of Russian aggression. Part two will be about the help that Ukraine needs in this field, and today we'll talk about damage sustained. So if you want to find out more about this, please continue watching this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our videos in the future. Olena Pavlenko is the president of DiXi Group, a Kyiv-based think tank aimed at research and consultations in the fields of policy, energy, security and investments. She has outlined the destruction sustained by Ukraine's energy sector and how the country has been overcoming these challenges.
Russian troops destroyed the energy infrastructure from the first days of the war. In March and April, they bombed oil depots and gas stations. They seized 2 nuclear power plants and used them to blackmail the whole world. At the beginning of the heating season, they began bombing thermal power plants and power grids in order to stop the supply of electricity and heat to all regions of Ukraine. As of today, 40% of Ukraine's energy infrastructure is damaged. Around 7,000 kilometers of gas distribution networks, 50% of thermal power plants are destroyed or damaged. Over 28 oil depots are destroyed. 80% of our wind and solar generation is either damaged or occupied. Our gas and electricity generation decreased by 30%, and today Ukrainian consumers have regular blackouts in all regions of the country. The Ukrainian energy system is resilient and will withstand the war. But in order for Ukrainians in cities and villages to have constant access to heating and electricity during the winter period, the help of international partners is needed. In villages and local communities where there are individual houses, every family prepares for winter. Many people have installed solid fuel boilers and prepare firewood, but local governments in such villages and communities need generators to keep water pumps or local hospitals running. They also need mobile boiler houses to heat the premises where people will come if the infrastructure is completely destroyed.
Antosha Antonina is a press secretary at DTEK Group, the largest private energy company in Ukraine. She speaks to us about how her life and the life of her colleagues has changed since February 24th.
I'm recording this video from a bomb shelter as another missile attack launched by Russia is currently happening in Ukraine. 8 months ago, Russia has launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. After failing on the battlefield, the enemy has changed the tactics, which cannot be called anything other than terrorism. Ukrainian energy infrastructure has become the #1 target for Russians. The ultimate goal of these actions is to cause a real humanitarian catastrophe in Ukraine and break the resistance of our people. DTEK is the largest private energy company in Ukraine. We generate and distribute electricity, produce gas, and provide services to over 15 million consumers. Now, our employees and employees of other energy companies risk their lives every day going to work and doing their job. On October 18th, 7 workers of our power plant were injured and another 2 died. But we have our own energy front, and we cannot leave our combat posts. Our people are working 24/7 to restore power supplies disrupted by the shelling. However, the scale of damage to the energy infrastructure is great. DTEK generation facilities are not an exception. Luhanska coal power plant is occupied by the Russian army and disconnected from the grid. Zaporizhzhia coal power plant stopped working due to occupation and immediate proximity to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. 3 more DTEK thermal power plants were temporarily disabled due to damage caused by the shelling. Since the beginning of the war, over 107 missiles and drones have been fired at DTEK power plants and grids. Talking about other generating companies, 1 thermal power plant of Donbas Energo and 2 power plants of state-owned Center Energo are currently not operational. Some thermal power plants cannot operate not because they have been damaged, but because they have been cut from coal supply. It is worth noting that Russian strikes are not aimed at generating facilities. They hit open switchgears, transformers, switches, so that the station can produce electricity but cannot be connected to the unified power system. That is, the key targets are Ukrenergo transformer high-voltage substations and power distribution equipment at thermal power plants. 422,000 consumers in average per day do not have electricity supply as a result of Russian invasion. But recent Russian attacks had an even more detrimental effect. Due to the shelling of energy infrastructure, rolling blackouts and power cuts implemented throughout the whole country, as of this very moment, some parts of Kyiv region are cut off the grid. Total blackouts occurred in some cities and towns of Ukraine, leaving the citizens with no internet or mobile connection, water supply or heat for several days in a row. Ukraine was forced to stop the export of electricity to the EU.
And last but not least, Victoria Voytsitska is a former MP and secretary of the Committee on Fuel, Energy, Nuclear Policies and Security. Now she is advocating for Ukraine's victory as part of the International Center for Ukrainian Victory. Let's have a listen to what she has to say.
So when it comes to critical infrastructure and damages that are being done by attacks of using missiles and kamikaze drones, what Russians are trying to achieve, and they've been in some parts successful, is that they're destroying substations that allow the electricity that's being produced on different power plants that run on gas, on coal, nuclear power stations, hydro. So all of them, they need substations to deliver big volumes of electricity to the final consumers. And Russians are targeting such substations, making it impossible to deliver the electricity in the required volumes to the final consumers. That is why we have blackouts in Kyiv, for example, in Zhytomyr region, in Khmelnytsky region, and other regions. We have, unfortunately, limited supply of electricity during the day and during the night, and it makes lives difficult for all of us. It has negative impact on the economy because businesses cannot plan, or when they plan their operations, they have limited access to the electricity, and that makes them make really hard decisions whether to continue the operations or to start looking at the options of laying off people, Ukrainians, or shutting down businesses completely. And of course, such dire circumstances, they will lead to ever increasing number of unemployed Ukrainians. Right now, we already have unemployment at the rate of over 30%. So the shortages of electricity, the blackouts, they create not only problems and challenges for people's lives, meaning not having light in your houses, in your apartments, not having regular access to drinkable water, having problems with the internet access, with mobile coverage, etc. All of that, in addition to all of that, businesses and the economy is becoming more fragile. Since the beginning of full-scale invasion in February, Russia has methodically, cynically been destroying Ukrainian critical infrastructure, especially the one that relates to energy sector. As a result, today we have millions and millions of Ukrainians who have no lights in their apartments, in their houses. And when we talk about missing electricity and missing light in their apartments, we need to understand that major cities in Ukraine, those that are being affected by the attacks, they are represented by multi-story apartment buildings. And in multi-story apartment buildings, when there is no electricity, the elevators do not work. In a significant number of apartments, especially in Kyiv, for example, in the capital of Ukraine, people use electrical stoves, so they don't have any chance to cook warm meal for themselves, their kids, their relatives, their elderly. When it comes to families with kids and people with disabilities or elderly, it becomes really a challenge to even do simple things. Get out of the apartment, get back to apartment. Simple things are not available, such as, for example, mobile coverage. When there are blackouts, it's becoming a real challenge as well. Internet is also on and off. So when we look at the effect of such attacks, we need to remember not just about absent electricity, but the negative and really detrimental effect that it has on lives of ordinary Ukrainians, ordinary people, and businesses as well. For example, bakeries or plants and businesses that are producing dairy products, they are also experiencing major disruptions. Moreover, when there is no electricity, the water treatment companies and water supply companies, they cannot deliver water to apartment buildings as well. So just imagine you are living in an apartment, there is no light, there is no way to get out, especially if you live on the 7th, 8th, 12th or above floor, to get out of your apartment building. You don't know what is going on outside because there is no internet, there is no mobile coverage. Just imagine that there is no running water and there is no way for you to cook food for your kids. This is the reality that Russians are unfortunately creating for all of us, for Ukrainians, or for most of us for sure.
You've been watching the special project by Ukraine Media Center and Euro-Atlantic course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukraine in Flames. In our pinned comment, you can find information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, please subscribe to our channel, like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!